The YouTube channel Life of Luxury has built a reputation as one of the most distinctive horror series on the platform. Blending the aesthetics of a found footage documentary with psychological horror, its creators Parker and Chester present themselves as investigators who help people experiencing paranormal or disturbing events. Each video begins with an email from someone seeking help, followed by a recorded investigation that blurs the line between reality and performance. This framing makes the channel's horror feel intimate and plausible, as if the audience is watching a case that could be happening in the next town over. In the video, Something is Wrong with Her Mom. The story begins with an email from a 9-year-old girl named Emma. Her message is short, frightened, and pleading. She believes someone is stalking her house at night, trying to get inside. Parker and Chester, as usual, decide to visit her to make sure she's safe. But from the very beginning, the tone feels different, quieter, heavier, and more unsettling than usual. The setting is a dark suburban home lit only by weak lamps, and the ambient silence is occasionally pierced by the creak of the floorboards. The narration, calm but uneasy, draws the viewer into a world that already feels contaminated by something unseen. When the two hosts arrive at Emma's address, the situation turns immediately confusing. Instead of meeting a 9-year-old girl, they are greeted by a middle-aged woman who insists that she is Emma. Her expressionless smile, stiff body movements, and slow, monotone speech give the scene a dreamlike, almost uncanny quality. Parker and Chester exchange uncertain glances, polite but visibly disturbed. This tension between social courtesy and instinctive fear becomes one of the key psychological engines of the episode. They must act calm while every signal in the environment tells them something is terribly wrong. Throughout the introduction, Life of Luxury establishes its hallmark atmosphere of creepy realism. The horror is not loud or bloody. It comes from small details, the flat lighting, the distorted color tones, the long pauses in dialogue. The viewer, like the hosts, begins to wonder, who is this woman? If she's not the real Emma, where is the girl who wrote the email? And perhaps most hauntingly, what is she hiding inside this house? This central question, whether Emma's mother truly has a problem or whether something far darker is lurking behind her identity, becomes the emotional anchor of the story. The camera, often handheld and shaky, adds to the sense of unease, as if we are witnessing a real investigation spiraling out of control. The opening scenes are not only an exposition of plot, but also a psychological setup, priming the audience to distrust everything they see. By the time the lights dim and the first strange sounds echo through the house, the video has already done its most important work. It has made the viewer believe in the fear. The introduction of Something is Wrong with Her Mom is therefore not just a narrative beginning, it is a test of perception, asking us to question what is real, who is telling the truth, and whether horror might sometimes wear the face of a loved one. When Parker and Chester arrive at Emma's house, the setting itself becomes an unspoken character, silent, dim, and heavy with unease. The house is ordinary in structure, yet visually suffocating. Its corridors are narrow, the wallpaper faded, and every corner seems to swallow the light. The lighting design is one of the first tools Life of Luxury uses to convey psychological tension. The warm tones of the lamps contrast sharply with the surrounding darkness, creating an unnatural claustrophobic glow, a visual metaphor for false comfort. As the two hosts step inside, the first sound the viewer notices is not dialogue, but the low hum of an empty home. The air seems dense. The camera lingers on domestic objects, a crooked picture frame, an untouched cup, the glint of glass from a doll's eyes. Each close-up is a quiet reminder that something here resists normalcy. The handheld camera trembles slightly, as if the cameraman is nervous, forcing the audience to share his physical anxiety. This realism, constructed through subtle instability, is the signature of life of luxury. Fear communicated not by monsters, but by the camera itself. Then, the woman appears, the one who calls herself Emma. Her entrance is slow and disorienting. She steps out from the shadows of the hallway, her face half-lit, her expression frozen in a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. The age difference is immediately apparent, yet she speaks as if she is the young girl who wrote the email. "I'm Emma," she says, in a flat, almost mechanical tone. The words sound rehearsed, not lived. Her gestures are jerky, her gaze unfocused. At one point, she holds up a doll and refers to it as her daughter, which instantly fractures the illusion of normalcy. The viewer realizes, along with Parker and Chester, that this encounter is not merely awkward, but profoundly wrong. The performance of the woman, intentionally stiff and off-rhythm, evokes the discomfort of the uncanny valley, that eerie gap between something human and something pretending to be human. Parker, usually the more skeptical of the two, tries to maintain composure. He keeps his tone polite, asking simple questions, while his eyes dart around the room searching for clues. Chester, by contrast, displays visible nervousness. His body leans slightly backward, as if ready to retreat at any moment. Their contrasting reactions make the tension more believable. Two human approaches to fear, confrontation, and avoidance. As the conversation continues, the woman's responses grow increasingly incoherent. She ignores questions, repeats phrases, and suddenly bursts into irritation when they mention setting up surveillance cameras. At 8:17, her face contorts in visible anger, and for a moment, her voice deepens unnaturally. This subtle distortion, a mix of acting and sound design, signals the breakdown of her facade. The scene is masterfully shot in low exposure, allowing the shadows to consume her outline as she turns away, giving her an almost ghostly silhouette. From a cinematic standpoint, this sequence demonstrates Life of Luxury's effective use of psychological minimalism. There is no explicit horror yet, but every frame whispers danger. The tension arises from ambiguity, from what is left unsaid and unseen. By placing Parker and Chester in a domestic setting rather than a haunted house, the series transforms everyday spaces into emotional traps. The familiar becomes threatening precisely because it refuses to behave as it should. The editing rhythm reinforces this. Long takes stretch the discomfort, making silences feel eternal. Each time the hosts glance at one another, the cut lingers just long enough to capture their unspoken fear. The soundscape, composed of creaks, faint breathing, and the distant hum of a refrigerator, builds a sense of authenticity that mimics documentary realism. The result is an environment where both characters and viewers are trapped between politeness and panic. Psychologically, this scene also introduces the central motif of false identity. The woman's insistence that she is Emma is not just a lie. It becomes a metaphor for corrupted reality, the idea that evil can wear the face of innocence. In this sense, Life of Luxury borrows from the classic Gothic tradition. The home as a site of deceit, the family as a vessel of horror, and the mother figure as something no longer nurturing but predatory. By the end of this sequence, the viewer feels a quiet dread. The characters are still being civil, still trying to rationalize the situation, yet instinctively, everyone knows that something is watching, listening, waiting. The house, dim and still, becomes a psychological mirror reflecting their fear. Parker and Chester's journey has only begun, but the rules of reality have already started to fracture. The audience is left in that precarious space between skepticism and terror, unsure whether the real danger lies in ghosts, madness, or human deceit. As night falls, the calm facade of the house begins to crack. What was once merely unsettling now becomes overtly abnormal. Parker and Chester, having installed a few cameras around the home, settle into their usual routine of nighttime observation, a hallmark structure in Life of Luxury's storytelling. This phase of the video is where subtle horror transforms into visual tension, and the line between human and inhuman behavior begins to blur. The first sign comes quietly. A faint scratching sound echoes from the hallway, deliberate but hesitant, like nails brushing wood. Chester's handheld camera captures the dim outline of something moving just beyond the frame. It's not enough to see clearly, but enough to feel. Life of Luxury relies on this technique of partial revelation. The fear is not what is shown, but what the viewer almost sees. When the footage cuts to the doll, the same one the woman had called her daughter earlier, now positioned differently, the effect is chilling. The inanimate has become complicit in the mystery. Later, Parker notices the photographs in the living room. Faces are scratched out violently, as if someone was trying to erase identity itself. One picture, likely of Emma, has deep gouges across the eyes. This visual motif recurs throughout Life of Luxury, the destruction of the face as a metaphor for corrupted selfhood. In horror, the face represents recognition. To mutilate it is to deny reality. These images don't just signal madness, they suggest a deliberate act of concealment. Someone, or something, doesn't want to be seen. As the night deepens, the audio design grows more oppressive. Low-frequency rumbles merge with the hum of electrical noise, creating an almost subconscious unease. In one of the surveillance clips, the woman or the creature impersonating her is seen standing motionless in the hallway at 3:14 a.m. Her body is perfectly still, but her head twitches slightly every few seconds. A glitch in human rhythm. The longer the shot lasts, the more unnatural she seems. This prolonged stillness is a signature technique of the channel, forcing the viewer to confront the uncanny through endurance. Then comes one of the most disturbing moments, the voice. From the baby monitor placed near the doll, a faint whisper emerges. "Where's my daughter?" The sentence repeats, distorted, as though coming from beneath water. Chester recoils, Parker freezes. It's the first direct intrusion of the supernatural or psychotic into the realm of the audible. Whether it's a ghostly echo or a product of madness, the effect is the same. The sound transforms the familiar into the threatening. The pacing of this section is deliberately slow, almost ritualistic. Life of Luxury understands that horror thrives on rhythm. Fear must expand and contract like breathing. Long silences are punctuated by sudden, tiny movements. A door swinging open. The sound of steps in another room. A faint exhale near the camera. By refusing to show too much, the creators maintain total control over the audience's imagination. The result is not terror through spectacle, but terror through anticipation. At this point, both Parker and Chester begin to question what they're seeing. Parker's rational side interprets the events as delusion or mental illness, while Chester, more emotionally reactive, starts to believe something inhuman is inhabiting the house. Their dialogue reflects two responses to fear logic versus intuition, echoing the viewer's own divided mind. This dynamic not only builds narrative realism, but also deepens the psychological subtext. horror as the collapse of explanation. From a thematic perspective, this section reinforces Life of Luxury's recurring motif of the corrupted family. The woman's behavior and the house's eerie stillness embody the horror of intimacy gone wrong. What should be safe, a home, a parent, a doll, becomes predatory. The directors use visual metaphors like the doll and the scratched photographs to externalize Emma's invisible trauma. Each object becomes an extension of her fear, a physical manifestation of something unspeakable happening in this domestic space. Compared to other videos from the series, such as She's Not My Sister or There's Something Wrong with Her Dad, the pattern is familiar yet refined. Life of Luxury often constructs horror through disguised normality. The idea that evil hides behind familial roles. In Something Is Wrong with Her Mom, the twist of maternal affection turning monstrous reaches its peak form. It's not the grotesque visuals that frighten us most, but the betrayal of love itself. As the final shots of this segment fade to black, a new question emerges, whispered but persistent. If this woman isn't Emma, then who is she? The audience now feels trapped in the same uncertainty as the hosts, their skepticism eroded by dread. The ordinary house no longer feels like a location but a psychological maze, where every door hides a version of truth too terrifying to confront. The turning point of Something Is Wrong with Her Mom arrives in the stillness of night. The cameras are rolling, the lights dim, and for a moment, everything seems frozen. Then a scream pierces through the silence. It is sharp, desperate, and unmistakably human. Parker jolts awake, the camera jerking violently as he rushes down the hallway. Chester follows, whispering frantic questions that go unanswered. The tension explodes not through violence, but through movement, the sudden shift from watchful waiting to chaotic urgency. The two descend into the basement, a space that immediately feels different from the rest of the house. The walls are unfinished, the air damp, and the light flickers in erratic pulses. The claustrophobic framing, narrow corridors, shaky focus, constant darkness creates a visual metaphor for psychological descent. This is Life of Luxury's most effective cinematic space. The basement as a subconscious realm where the truth festers out of sight. The sound design amplifies the panic. Each footstep echoes unnaturally, and the ambient hum of the house transforms into a low, throbbing pulse, like a heartbeat too close to the ear. Parker's breathing is heavy, his voice trembling as he calls out Emma's name. The camera catches glimpses of objects covered in sheets, broken furniture, the edge of a cage. Then, from the darkness, comes a faint cry. "Please, help me." The discovery is both horrifying and heartbreaking. In a small, locked enclosure, they find a young woman terrified, trembling and pale, claiming to be the real Emma. Her hair is tangled, her wrists bruised, her eyes wide with disbelief. The visual contrast between this Emma and the Emma upstairs is jarring. One fragile and human, the other cold and unnatural. The horror here is not the appearance of a monster, but the revelation of truth that the ordinary has been an illusion all along. Parker fumbles to unlock the door, his hands shaking, while Chester keeps glancing behind them, as if expecting the imposter to appear at any second. The handheld camera flickers as light bounces off metal and dust particles, creating a haze that blurs reality. When Emma finally steps out, her voice cracks. "She's not my mom." The sentence lands with devastating clarity. Every uncanny moment up to now, the doll, the scratched photographs, the whispers suddenly aligns. The mother figure is not merely delusional, she is something other. From a psychological standpoint, This moment crystallizes the video's central metaphor, the distortion of family identity. The woman posing as Emma's mother embodies the terror of recognition, the idea that someone you love could become unrecognizable, replaced by something mimicking affection but devoid of empathy. In this way, Life of Luxury turns domestic familiarity into horror's most effective weapon. The basement becomes a symbolic underworld, where truth confronts deception, where selfhood is restored only through pain. The visual storytelling during this sequence is particularly meticulous. The lighting is deliberately inconsistent. Sometimes the flashlight overexposes faces, other times it plunges them into darkness mid-sentence. This erratic illumination mirrors the instability of knowledge itself. We can only glimpse fragments of truth before it slips away. The framing often traps the characters within doorways or behind bars, reinforcing the theme of confinement, not just physical but existential. When the mother finally appears at the top of the stairs, her silhouette looms like an abstract shape, almost inhuman. Her movements are stiff yet fast, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. The camera tilts upward abruptly, capturing only fragments: a hand, a distorted face, hair whipping in motion. The editing becomes frantic, cutting between the host's terrified expressions and the advancing shadow. There is no full reveal, because Life of Luxury knows that clarity kills fear. The unknown remains sovereign. The following chase sequence through the basement is pure sensory overload. The sound of heavy breathing, the slam of doors, the shrill echo of footsteps. Yet within the chaos lies method. The creators avoid typical jump scares, opting instead for sustained panic, the dread of being haunted in darkness. Parker's voice shakes as he urges Emma to run. Chester's camera jerks violently, and the viewer's perspective dissolves into pure survival instinct. This first-person immersion transforms fear from observation into experience. Symbolically, the basement scene also carries a deeper psychological undertone. It externalizes the idea of hidden trauma, what is repressed in the house's foundation. The creature upstairs, claiming motherhood, represents the contamination of memory, the perversion of comfort. By confronting her, Emma metaphorically confronts the buried truth of her own victimization. The rescue is not just physical liberation. It is the restoration of identity stolen by imitation. When the trio finally escapes the basement, gasping and trembling, the camera catches one last glimpse of the woman's distorted face as she shrieks from the shadows. The image is overexposed, almost abstract, as if the camera itself rejects what it sees. This stylistic choice is central to Life of Luxury's philosophy of horror. Evil cannot be fully visualized because its power lies in incomprehension. The sequence ends abruptly, no grand explanation, no exposition, just the pounding echo of retreat. In silence, the truth stands unspoken. The real Emma has been trapped beneath her own home, and whatever lived above her was never meant to exist. The basement is both a setting and a psyche, a dark mirror reflecting what happens when love, memory, and identity are replaced by something that only looks human. The moment Parker, Chester, and the real Emma emerge from the basement, the video shifts from psychological suspense to raw survival. What had been a slow, suffocating descent into madness becomes a desperate fight to escape the embodiment of that madness. The air feels charged, every sound amplified, every shadow threatening to move. Life of Luxury often structures its videos around this climactic rupture. When the investigation collapses into chaos and the illusion of control vanishes, the first image after they flee the basement is disorienting. The hallway lights flicker, throwing fractured patterns across the walls. The sound mix grows erratic, the overlapping noise of footsteps, heavy breathing, and the woman's distorted screams echoing from somewhere unseen. She is no longer speaking in sentences, but in guttural noises, half human, half animal. The transformation is not physical, there are no visual effects, yet the distortion of her voice alone feels monstrous enough. The horror is auditory, primal. Parker leads Emma toward the front door, while Chester stumbles behind, his camera shaking violently. The handheld perspective here is crucial. Instead of cutting to clean, cinematic angles, the footage remains chaotic, giving the scene a documentary realism as though the viewer has become the fourth participant in their escape. The flashlight beam swings wildly, revealing fleeting images. The doll on the floor, the scratched photos, the shadow of movement at the edge of the frame. Each glimpse reminds the viewer that this house is not just a location, but a living organism resisting their exit. Then the chase begins in earnest. The woman appears at the end of the corridor, her posture twisted, her movements abrupt and unnatural. She charges forward in bursts, stopping suddenly as if pulled back by invisible force, her body jerking like a puppet fighting its strings. The camera catches only fragments her pale face, her eyes wide and unblinking, but never long enough to identify her fully. This partial exposure is deliberate. Life of Luxury sustains fear by withholding completion. The editing intensifies, alternating between close-ups of panic and wide, shaky shots that blur motion into abstraction. There is no music, only raw sound doors slamming, objects falling, and the rasp of breath. Parker's shouts blur with Emma's cries. Chester's voice trembles as he calls for them to hurry. The lack of a musical score removes any sense of cinematic comfort. The scene feels unscored because, in terror, life itself loses rhythm. When they finally burst through the front door, the sudden expanse of night feels almost unreal. The camera's exposure struggles to adjust to the darkness outside, and for a few seconds, the screen shows nothing but blurry shadows and the sound of running feet on gravel. Then, in the distance, a figure appears at the doorway, the woman motionless again, her head slightly tilted. She does not chase them further, she only watches. The stillness is worse than pursuit. It implies control, as if she has chosen to let them go or knows that escape is temporary. The final moments unfold in the car, the host's familiar safe zone in every Life of Luxury video. The interior is lit by dashboard light. The frame trembles as the car speeds away. Parker and Chester try to catch their breath, Emma sobbing quietly in the back seat. Their conversation is fragmented disbelief, confusion, and guilt intertwine. "What was that thing?" Chester mutters. Parker doesn't answer. His silence is heavier than words. It implies knowledge that cannot be voiced. Cinematically, the escape scene functions as both climax and refusal, the height of action, followed by the denial of resolution. There is no explanation, no return to normality. The video cuts abruptly to black, then to the familiar outro message, reminding viewers to stay safe. But in context, that phrase feels hollow, almost ironic. Safety, after what they've witnessed, no longer seems possible. The unknown has already entered their world and ours. From a thematic standpoint, this sequence illustrates Life of Luxury's fascination with open-ended horror. Unlike traditional narratives where evil is destroyed or contained, here, it simply persists. The woman's scream lingers long after the screen fades, echoing the idea that some horrors cannot be understood or escaped. The The lack of closure is the closure a deliberate psychological trap that keeps the audience haunted by unanswered questions. Emotionally, the rescue and escape scenes also mark the peak of human vulnerability. Parker's protective instincts, Chester's visible fear, and Emma's broken composure intertwine to form a tableau of collective trauma. They are not heroes. They are survivors. Their panic feels genuine, not performed, and the handheld camera makes their fear contagious. The viewer's heartbeat syncs with the chaos on screen. In its final frame, "Something is wrong with her mom" completes its transformation from mystery to nightmare. The escape does not deliver relief, only the realization that evil can inhabit ordinary homes, ordinary faces, and ordinary love. The story ends, but its implications remain unresolved, echoing the channel's philosophy. The most terrifying horrors are not those that chase you, but those that wait quietly in familiar places. Beyond its chilling surface, "Something is Wrong with Her Mom" is a study of fear as a reflection of human intimacy. The video's terror does not rely on monsters or gore, but on the unsettling collapse of trust, the moment when family, the most sacred human bond, becomes a source of danger. Through its minimalist horror aesthetics, Life of Luxury transforms the ordinary home into a psychological battlefield where affection and menace coexist. At its core, the story is not merely about a haunted house or a possessed woman. It is about the disintegration of identity within family dynamics. The imposter mother represents a distortion of maternal love nurturing, replaced by control, care replaced by obsession. In traditional horror, the threat often comes from outside. Here, the threat comes from within, disguised as safety. The question, what if the one who loves you most is not really who you think they are, echoes throughout the entire narrative, turning domestic comfort into existential dread. Thematically, the video explores the modern fear of disconnection. In an age defined by isolation and mediated relationships, Life of Luxury amplifies the anxiety of not knowing the people closest to us. Emma's plight becomes symbolic of a generation trapped between dependence and alienation, surrounded by family structures that appear intact but conceal emotional voids. The house, dim and quiet, becomes a metaphor for that emptiness. The false mother, then, is not only a supernatural entity, but also an allegory for psychological possession. She embodies the way trauma can occupy a person's life, speaking in familiar voices while erasing their true self. When Emma says, "She's not my mom," it resonates as both literal revelation and metaphorical catharsis, the moment when the victim names the force that has stolen her agency. This psychological reading situates the video within a lineage of horror concerned with identity and autonomy rather than mere fright. From a cinematic perspective, the video's balance between realism and surrealism is what gives it power. The shaky camera, dim lighting, and unscripted dialogue create a sense of authenticity, making the supernatural feel plausible. Yet at the same time, the editing and framing suggest something dreamlike, a world slightly off, as if reality itself were malfunctioning. This duality mirrors the experience of trauma, familiar and unreal at once. When compared to films like Run, 2020, or Get Out, 2017, Life of Luxury's work feels like a distilled microcosm of those narratives, a short-form horror that captures similar anxieties about trust, autonomy, and psychological control. In Run, a mother's overprotective love becomes imprisonment. In Get Out, affection conceals exploitation. Likewise, in Something is Wrong with Her Mom, Love is mimicked but not felt, the ultimate horror of emotional counterfeit. Socially, the episode can also be read as commentary on loneliness and the fear of invisibility. Emma's initial email, a cry for help ignored until it's almost too late, mirrors the experience of many young people whose suffering goes unnoticed. The host's delayed response and their disbelief upon arrival critique the societal instinct to rationalize or dismiss cries for help until they manifest as catastrophe. The monster here is not only supernatural but systemic, a world where empathy fails. Technically, the video's restraint is its greatest strength. It refuses spectacle and instead cultivates unease through pacing, silence, and suggestion. The open ending, the absence of closure, is not a flaw, but a deliberate artistic statement. In Life of Luxury, horror never ends, because fear is not a story, it is a condition. The channel's creepy realism thrives on this ambiguity, keeping its viewers suspended between disbelief and dread long after the video finishes. Ultimately, Something Is Wrong with Her Mom transcends its short runtime to deliver a complex meditation on trust, identity, and the horror hidden in familiarity. Its message lingers precisely because it offers no resolution. The viewer is left not with answers, but with an emotion that quiet, haunting thought. What if the face you love most is no longer human? Watching Something Is Wrong with Her Mom left me with a sense of quiet unease that lingered long after the video ended. Unlike traditional horror that relies on jump scares or grotesque imagery, this episode unsettles through its psychological intimacy. The feeling that what is terrifying is not far away, but already inside the home. What makes Life of Luxury so effective is precisely this intimacy. Fear emerges not from spectacle, but from suggestion. The first thing that struck me was the emotional temperature of the video. Cold, hushed, and tense. The house feels alive yet empty, and the characters' restrained reactions make the viewer's anxiety multiply in silence. Parker and Chester are not horror heroes in the conventional sense. They are hesitant, visibly nervous, and sometimes unsure of what they are even witnessing. Their uncertainty mirrors our own, making the experience deeply immersive. I found myself holding my breath during moments when nothing happened, proof that the video's strength lies in anticipation rather than revelation. Cinematically, the production is surprisingly skillful for a YouTube horror format. The handheld camera work, though shaky, is purposeful. It gives the illusion of authenticity, as if we are witnessing a real investigation captured by people too scared to frame the shot properly. The dim, uneven lighting serves as a narrative device, hiding the truth just enough to force the imagination to fill the void. Even the moments of technical imperfection, abrupt cuts, muffled audio, overexposed flashes, contribute to the realism. They feel less like errors and more like the camera reacting to fear. The performances also deserve attention. The actress playing the mother delivers a remarkable portrayal of unease through minimalism. Her speech patterns, delayed reactions, and distorted expressions communicate something alien beneath the surface of humanity. She doesn't need prosthetics or special effects to be terrifying. Her unnatural normality is enough. In contrast, the real Emma's fragility provides emotional grounding. Her trembling voice and exhausted eyes give the story a human weight that balances the surreal tone. Emotionally, the video evokes a very specific kind of fear. The fear of the familiar gone wrong. It reminded me of childhood moments when something in a known environment, a shadow, a voice, a family member's silence suddenly felt unfamiliar. That transformation of comfort into dread is what Life of Luxury captures so well. It's not about ghosts or demons. It's about the betrayal of safety. In terms of weaknesses, the dialogue can sometimes feel stiff or repetitive, and certain transitions break immersion momentarily. Yet even these flaws contribute to the uncanny realism. The awkward pacing mirrors the disjointed rhythm of real fear where time stretches and every second feels misplaced. The lack of clear explanation at the end might frustrate some viewers, but for me, it reinforces the central theme. Not all horrors can be neatly solved or understood. Ultimately, Something is Wrong with Her Mom succeeds not just as a short horror film, but as a psychological metaphor. It embodies the fear of losing trust, of realizing that love itself can become alien. The final image, the faceless mother standing in the doorway, feels less like an ending and more like a memory that refuses to fade.